What's up everybody, and welcome back to another First Impressions video. Today we're taking a look at the highly anticipated Destiny 2, which just had its PC open beta this past week. Being a PC gamer, I've never played the original Destiny, and so I have no preconceptions or opinions about the game. I'll be going into the game with a blank slate and share my opinions with you. Keep in mind that this is still a beta and the game is subject to change before its October launch date on the PC. And I have no idea why they decided to run a beta in the middle of the week instead of a weekend, but it really limited how much I could play the game, and I apologize in advance if there were some things that I glossed over or even missed completely. With all that said, let's get into it. First and foremost, I must commend Bungie for how well the game is. As primarily a console developer, Bungie has had a very little experience releasing titles on the PC, with their last one being Halo 2 in 2004. But Destiny 2 has a surprisingly complete suite of different options, including modern ones like HDR support. All this translates to gorgeous graphics and effects that's enough to make you stop and take in the environment. Based on the short time I've had with the game, Destiny 2 runs pretty well, and even in some of the more intensive combat sequences, I didn't have much of an issue with frame drops. The footage you see is based on 1440p resolution running on high settings on a GTX 1070. If you do experience massive frame drops when switching to higher graphical settings, Gamers Nexus has pointed out that turning on MSAA seems to dramatically affect the performance, and I found that turning it off actually did give me a substantial FPS boost. Gamers Nexus did a pretty thorough job benchmarking graphics cards and CPUs, as well as comparing texture qualities at the different graphical settings. So I'll leave links to that in the description below if you're interested. I personally really love the overall UI design of the game. It's clean, stylish, and functional, and it definitely gets my approval. One thing that is rarely at the center of any FPS game is the story or campaign, but since Destiny 2 is somewhat of an MMORPG, it is an important element here. And just from the initial story mission that I got to play, it seems like it could have some potential. The voice acting is pretty good, and Cade definitely stood out on top for me. Since I've never played the original Destiny, I'm not familiar with the story, but I felt like I didn't have to play the first one to understand what was going on. Though there's no doubt that knowing the backstory of the characters, setting, and universe will certainly help. There's not much else to say in terms of story here, as the beta only included a 20-minute intro mission. In general, I found the gameplay to be pretty enjoyable. The guns all felt different enough, and each clearly has its own use case. The ammos for the different types of gun are separated into 3 different categories, though I did find the max cap for the heavy bullets or power bullets to be way too low for my liking. Destiny 2 is a hybrid between your traditional shooter and a hero-based shooter like Overwatch. You get to choose from 3 different classes: the Hunter, which is your agile, almost assassin-like DPS class, your Titan, which is your frontliner, and a Warlock, which is somewhat of a backline support class. Though I'm kind of categorizing each class, they all feel like they do similar damage with their guns, and what really differentiates them are their skills. Each class has an AoE skill, a melee attack, a utility skill, and a super skill which takes time to charge up. What I didn't like about the skill system was their cooldown times. They're just way too high. Maybe Bungie wants to make gunplay the main focus rather than skills being front and center like Overwatch. If that's the case, then it certainly does its job well, as the skills are mainly there to support your gunplay and they're only really used once in a while. With that said, your melee is also bound to a skill cooldown, which is kind of a bummer because it's actually pretty lengthy, and it means you won't always be able to have your melee skill available in those fast reaction situations. What I did find really satisfying are the supers. When you activate them, you get an epic energy based weapon. The Hunter gets a lightning staff, the Warlock gets a flaming sword, and the Titans get a void shield. These weapons hit really hard, they look fantastic, and they feel great. The one downside is, again, the cooldown is really long. You can also change and augment these super skills based on your subclass. I would have liked to see something like Overwatch, where instead of it being completely time based, have it charged based on the damage you do as well, because in its current state, it does feel like it takes a really long time for the skill to become available. Destiny 2 has a lot more RPG elements to the game, like getting loot and equipment, augmenting your own skills through skill trees and subclasses, etc. But unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to take a look at them. However, I did do a couple of rounds of PvP, though it didn't impress me too much. They felt like your run-of-the-mill FPS modes like Capture the Point, and there were only a limited number of them available in the beta, so you can expect more variety when the game goes live. There's also a PvE co-op mode where you and 2 other players go through a dungeon-like area which ends in a boss fight. I actually found the boss fights to be quite good, and I expected it to be a pretty boring bullet sponge affair, but there were actually different mechanics and the fight required you to be engaged and pay attention. I do wish that they would expand the co-op to more players because 3-player dungeons feel a bit too small in my opinion. Overall, Destiny 2 seems like a decent game based on my very limited playtime. However, we'll have to wait and see how everything pans out when the full game is released. One advantage of having the PC version coming out after the console is that we get to see the reviews before we decide to buy it. The console version comes out later this week on September September 6th, while the PC version comes out on October 24th. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and if you liked the video, consider subscribing for more gaming content. You can follow me on Twitter for channel updates, info on upcoming videos, gaming news, and I also sometimes post game deals that I find online. I'll have links to everything in the description box below. That's it from me, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.